Good morning, everybody. Today's discussion is about to explain the important concepts discussed in the Introduction of Risk Management, written by Paul Hopkins. So, we're going to answer the following questions. Following questions consist of 8 questions. So, we will start with the question number 1 on describing 4 evolving examples of commercial and business risks.
Okay, so for the first question, describe 4 evolving examples of commercial and business risk. So, when you say commercial and business risk, I think naanam gid tay ani kanang own understanding bitaw sa mga business risk, like ang mga safety risk, strategic risk, and all of that. And then based sa questions we have here, we answered here 4 answers. So first one is the operational risk, which is the risk of loss coming from poor or failed internal processes, people, technology, or external events that can interrupt business operations. So one good example for this one is the people. So in a business, naam ginay people. So kunay people na pud siya risk. So it refers the risk of financial losses and poor social performance as a result of deficiencies in human capital and human resource management. Now for the second example is the strategic risk. So it is about the optimum structure, target market, sales and marketing plan, production strategy, and other aspects of a small business must be all that. So when you say strategic risk, guys, na ba mo'y example or idea about it? Or
akong isa ka maisip is when nine changes bitaw in senior management and leadership. So where there is an introduction of new products or services.
Agree ko kay when you say bitaw ka ng senior management and leadership, kimurag under siguro na siya sa sa mga HR, like where mag-conduct sila mga trainings and all of that. So for the third strategy, for the third risk is the financial risk. So at the beginning, one of the most concerns is the cash flow when you say get financial risk. So in this case, you will need to think about how you will fund your operations or you pay your personnel. So in this case, lugar, unsa bay mga examples nga atong hatag ani in terms of financial risk?
Basically, financial risk is very understandable by its term already. So I think the best example of financial risk is when you invest in market penetration and expansion, where there are possible unintentional issues that might happen, like the unexpected financial loss when you invest in a market.
Yes, sakto dyan na dapat in a business dapat ma-anticipate na nato ng mga financial losses or financial gains. And then for the fourth risk is that the compliance risk. So there are a variety of laws and regulations that business owners must adhere to. So failure to comply could result in severe fines and penalties. Check federal agencies' information on a regular basis and get help from a compliance professionals to keep track of compliance. So naman self-explanatory naman kay na naman tay own understanding about it.
Okay, so now mag-move on na sa second question, which is to describe the 3 types of risk and give 2 examples each. So start with the hazard risk. So hazard risk is from dangerous or harmful actions or materials. So some example are the following, like sa workplace, like na mga chemical hazard created by inadequate storage or use of flammable, poisonous or toxic bitaw na siya risk sa mga workers, like maka-cause siya harm. May maisip ng mga examples dara.
I think aside sa mga chemical hazards kay ang mga carcinogenic substances as well as mga physical hazards bitaw, which includes sa mga high noises levels, sample sa mga factory nga kusog bitaw kayo mga tingog, so kailangan kag mga earplugs, and then extreme weather or other environmental conditions.
Yes, tama dito na mga kuan. Labaw na ng extreme high noise level where ginasadihan ba yan nato na sa to ang work measurements sa una. So let's now move on to the next risk, which is the control risk. So uncertainty about unknown or unexpected events cause this from the risk. So it is difficult to know what's going to happen and how much harm they can create. It is also difficult to keep an eye on the damage once it's done. So for example, there are fires, floods, and other natural disasters na dili na ito ma-predict. So, naman yung laing maisip na mga examples, guys?
Para sa ko, a concrete example for this control risk is when you invest in a market, then you have so basically when you invest in a market, you have a market share on that. So with the rising number of competitors in the market or products entering the business or the market per se, it is in a given that there will be unexpected financial loss owing to an economic downturn. So examples of this are bankruptcy or of other businesses that you owe money. So muna siya ang control risk example for me.
Oo, no, tama sad. So now let's move on to the third risk, which is the opportunity risk. It is when you choose one chance over another. You are taking a risk bitaw, di ba? By deciding to commit all of your resources on a single project, like for example, meeting greater opportunity and achieving the unexpected outcomes, like moving into a firm to a new location or buying a new property, or it could also be offering new products or services. So these are the examples of the opportunity cost. So let's now move on to the third question.
Oh, the third question is there a need to develop a standardized language of risk? So basically, the answer would be yes, because there is a need. Standardization is argued to be necessary in order to facilitate proper communications, if possible, to make the establishments uniform bitaw dahil lahang pag standardized and according sa International Organization of Standardization, dapat ito mag-produce of terminology to develop a uniform language of risk. So next question, number 4.
So number 4, describe a specific and real example of an organization that experiences failure to adequately manage risk and narrate specific reasons for the failure. So one good example for this one is the Coca-Cola and Pepsi company, which failed to manage cross-cultural risk, which is known also as strategic risk. So according to a research or according to a source, both beverage giants had issues when first moving into the China market. So Coca-Cola named their product a Chinese phrase that would sound like the original name, but however, this new phrase translated to bite the wax tadpole didn't go over well. So Pepsi brought a new slogan to the Chinese market. So it was Pepsi brings you back to life. So unfortunately, the phrase translated to Pepsi brings your ancestors back to life. Both companies had to revamp their Chinese campaigns.
Yes, there are some companies that failed. However, there are some companies naman that succeed due to analyzing or managing the risk well. So for one example of that is the McDonald's Corporation. So it is the most successful global restaurant chains around the world. So McDonald's strategic aim is to support cultural diversity and adjust its offspring to local markets. So one example of this is when McDonald's immersed or have a branch in Japan. So the consumer attitude in Japan is very different from the US or the Western people. So initially, McDonald's in Japan retained the menu for the US market. However, it gradually rolled out a new menu such as the rice burger, seaweed shakers, teriyaki burgers, and shrimp burgers, For the drinks naman, they also have catered like the green tea milkshake and ice cream to cater the Japanese preference. So also they have also recognized that Japanese Japanese brands or Japanese people have smaller serving size compared to those of the Westerns. So do you have any examples of that is quite similar to this, where they succeed by managing the risk very well?
I think it would be Indonesia, but same lang gyapon, McDonald's lang gyapon. Although ang mga people that to bito sa Indonesians is most of them are all Muslim. So in that case kay we're ga-adapt bitaw sila silang dietary needs. So they need to replace the pork into fish. So it would ensure their outlets are strictly halal. Also in addition pod kay because Indonesians are Muslims, so they prefer rice over bread. So in this case, McDonald's has also incorporated rice into their meal together with some spicy alternatives that local Indonesians prefer.
So for the sixth question, do you believe on the statement yes or no? Then explain. So the statement would be because of the global financial crisis and the continuing economic difficulties around the world, risk management continues to be a very high profile topic. So I think the answer would be yes. For the current situation that we have right now with the pandemic, it has been almost 3 years, 2 years to be exact. And the advent coronavirus that it brought to the global health emergency by the spread of this disease nag-affect siya o tall losses of jobs and incomes nagled sa hunger and adverse effect of individuals' quality life. So murag if related to siya sa government which basically this is a problem of the government, not just for the individuality of a person, or siya ganing tungod kay wala na income ang mga people. So the government really has the responsibility to provide for its people. So risk ya po siya. So do you have any idea guys na
Agree ko ana kay also it all boils down pud siguro sa economic risk kay murag tanan man gid siguro ta ang naapektuhan ani nga crisis, not just kanang mga dato murag gulag ta ni sa gipili gid nga mga people white or black and kanang dato or dili nga na bitaw murag gulag gid siya gipili ana man.
Yeah, also as you have mentioned na wala gid siya ginapili, that's why dagan yung dapat attention ang gina-focus into the risk management jud para ma-assure na whatever happens, whatever risk they might face, na mo-succeed gyapon ang company or ang establishment. Let's now move on to the seventh question, which is what can you say about the global financial crisis? So the global financial crisis or GFC was a period of extreme stress in global financial markets and banking system that lasted from late 2007 to early 2009. So many banks around the world suffered a large losses and had to rely on government assistance to avoid bankruptcy. Due to those times, a downturn in the U.S. housing market triggered a financial crisis that spread from the U.S. to the rest of the world via global financial system linkage. So the following factors are explained that causes the global financial crisis. First is the excessive risk-taking in favorable macroeconomics environment. Second is the increase in borrowing by banks and investors. And lastly, the third one would be the regulation and policies errors.
Now, for the last question, we have here, what do you know about your own sovereign debt? So, what is the risk in it to each one of us? So, a central government's debt is also known as sovereign debt. So, it is a foreign currency that issues issued by the national government to finance the issuing country's growth and development. So the country's sovereign credit ratings, which help investors weigh risk when assessing sovereign debt investment, can provide evidence of the issuing government's stability. So, in other words, sovereign debt is typically created by borrowing from the government and issuing securities. So, countries that are less creditworthy than others borrow directly from international organizations such as the World Bank and other international financial institutions. So, I think based akong own understanding kay murag one good example for this one is kanang COVID-19 bitaw karon, like ang mga other businesses kay murag kaano-ano gid sa mga utang nila, so they borrow money from the government, sayang uban kay galon gyud para makabawi bitaw sila capital kay murag lisod jud most of the businesses bitaw karon kay murag nalugmok gid sa utang because sa mga na-happen karon na crisis. Ano ba may mga shares, guys?
I think when we look at it in a bigger picture, like for the government, kung sila ang mag-borrow sa kuan, kasi gani ka ng funding dito nga provide World Bank. Yes. In order to to provide for its people, government magidana. So I think relate to the COVID-19 current situation, if ever mo na ang utang sa government, there would be a possibility nga ang mga people ang ibayad mo na to sa utang is ang mga taxes nga ilang nakuha. So there is a possibility nga ang taxes mo taas gyapon. So more to. So I think that ends our discussion for today. So thank you guys for sharing your ideas and thoughts and insights.
Thank you, Dan.